Oh boy, I'm back one last time to cover the finale of Season 2 of Amazon's Fallout show. And do I even need to give my opinion at this point? I'm sure you already know how I felt about it. Obviously, it was awful. In some ways, even worse than I thought it would be. This is one of the most limp dick finales to any show I've ever seen. I think back over the course of this season, what actually happened? Almost nothing, because the show constantly had like 4 different plot lines running at the same time. This felt like half a season at best. The only purpose this show serves is to take a massive dump on Fallout New Vegas. They ruined every single faction from the game. The last 2 seasons have established the NCR is dead, well, except a little scene that happens at the finale we'll get into. The Legion has been reduced to like 20 guys fighting over a hill, basically just some woman on the writing team's interpretation of toxic masculinity. Mr. House feels like he was written by Redditors who think this series is a commentary on the dangers of late-stage capitalism. Not going to get into that for the millionth time, but you'll still to this very day see hordes of comments on videos thinking that Fallout is a critique of capitalism, despite 2 of its creators saying this is not the case. Seriously, does anyone else find it suspicious how popular that Fallout was always woke video is? Those comments read like they were written by ChatGPT. And of course, arguably the greatest sin of all of this, once again, Fallout has just been reduced to an eternal conflict between the Brotherhood of Steel and the Enclave. I think legitimately the only people who enjoyed this show, other than YouTube shills, are tourists. The amount of times I've read comments on these videos of people saying their buddy at work, who hasn't even played a single game in the series, loves the show, tells you everything. That's who this was made for. I say this, and yet my own mother, who loves garbage streaming shows, including degenerate shit like White Lotus, and slop like the new Star Trek series, even she thought the Fallout show sucked. I'm not even kidding. If my mom thinks your show is bad, it's unbelievably awful. And if you were ever wondering why the Fallout TV show has so much millennial writing, Marvel movie speak, is because one of the showrunners is one of the women who wrote the screenplay for Captain Marvel. Yeah, that explains a lot, doesn't it? And people are defending this unironically. Which, you know what, to say something that might sound completely out of character, I think that would be fine in a vacuum. But when those same people come onto these videos and then claim they're the real fans of Fallout when they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about, because it's clear everything they know about the series is from watching Oxhorn videos or Rad King or TKS Mantis. All they do is embarrass themselves, but they have no humility, they have no self-awareness, they have no critical thinking skills. Are they even human? I'm not convinced. But to stop myself from going on the same rant I basically said over the last 4 videos, I fundamentally still do not understand how anyone could legitimately enjoy this show. It feels like it is wasting my time. And I'm going to try my best not to waste your time, the audience, by condensing my synopsis of episodes 6 and 7, because I think episodes 6 and 7 felt like filler anyway, and I have a lot more to say about the finale, so I doubt anyone will ultimately care. Feel free to use the chapter feature if you want to just skip to the rundown of the finale. Without further ado, let's get into episodes 6 and 7 of Fallout. Okay, so starting with episode 6, once again, just gonna break this into plot lines so that the pacing doesn't seem so absolutely ass. A significant chunk of this episode is wasted showing Cooper's wife dealing with all of the stress of being the Vault Tech CEO, and the entire purpose of these scenes is just to absolve her from saying she wanted to nuke the world to make a profit. Again, dumbest plot point ever written in human history. No humans like this show, gonna keep saying it. And at the end of this waste of time, we see that the Enclave scientist guy from Season 1 was telling her to do all this. Yes, the Enclave is behind everything. They're the only characters that matter. Brotherhood versus Enclave forever. That's Fallout. Oh yes, and apparently the cold fusion device that Mr. House wants was in Lucy's dad's neck the whole time, and Cooper's wife removes it from his neck as the pair decides that they can't trust Vault Tech for obvious reasons since they want to nuke the world. As for the vault plotline, I'm going to save everyone some time and not even mention this in my episode 7 synopsis. All you need to know is this goes nowhere. It is just a setup for season 3. Who cares that the vault is running out of water? It doesn't matter. Same goes for Lucy's brother Big Schnoz. Everything he does doesn't matter the least bit. In fact, that subplot is completely rendered pointless in the finale, as we'll discuss soon. As for the ghoul, just as I predicted, he was completely fine being impaled on a huge light pole because for some reason non-feral ghouls are basically immortal. This is never explained at any point because the feral ghouls die in like 1 or 2 shots. I'm not going to waste too much time ranting about that again. And right before he goes feral, he is rescued by a super mutant. Yes, we finally see a super mutant in the show. Played by Ron Perlman. I'm shocked he didn't say war never changes at some point. The mutant is apparently trying to put together a ghoul and super mutant alliance against the Enclave, which actually kind of sounds vaguely interesting, but this never goes anywhere. I guess it's more teasing for season 3? And so the ghoul refuses to join the super mutant, so the guy knocks him out and just leaves him in like a random shed where Maximus and his idiot buddy just so happen to find him in this giant-ass wasteland. All these characters just magically find each other with no struggle. And for the final plot line of the episode, we see that Lucy's dad has brought her to the Vault Tech Vault, where somehow he has managed to kidnap more than a dozen people and put the mind control chips on them. This is never explained. It is just that easy to grab random ass people out in the wasteland. I know people are gonna logic this and say, well, he just wore his power armor and knocked them out or something. This is fucking stupid, and we're just supposed to swallow this, you know, never question it for a moment. And even worse, we see that he somehow managed to kidnap one of the 2 NCR soldiers. Yeah, remember how there's only like 2 of them left in Mojave? Where was the black woman? Was she like sleeping or something? I don't know, just accept it, don't question it, whatever. The point of this scene is for him to try and convince his daughter that the only way to save the wasteland is to reprogram everyone into mindless corporate drones. Again, capitalism bad, haha, I get it. Because somehow he also kidnapped one of the Legion guys from the hill. I don't know how he managed that. Maybe there's just one wandering on a patrol somewhere, and he immediately tries to kill the NCR guy, and then he tries to kill Lucy too, so he has to be mind controlled to be fixed. Wow, what a compelling plot point. And yeah, that's pretty much it for episode 6. This was absolutely a filler episode. Period. There's so little worth talking about other than just the absurdity of the plot, so let's just move on. Now, episode 7 begins with another complete waste of time showing the backstory of the Cyclops. Remember when I said in my last video that she was secretly a Canadian? And some people pointed out to me, no, the twist is supposed to be that she was from before the war. Yeah, but that's not a twist either. There's like a million characters in this show who are cryogenically frozen. To expand on that plot point further, they give her backstory. She was a Canadian who was escaping some evil Americans during the annex of Canada or some shit. Her mother dies and she goes like full girl boss mode and escapes across the border. Okay, what the actual fuck is going on here?
Don't think of them as human beings. Think of them as Americans.
Why should anyone care about this? Does this look like Fallout to you other than the power armor that shows up? And when you see what all of this amounts to, you'll be asking yourself why the hell there is so much filler in this show. It is unbelievable. And how this ties into the present is that Cyclops wants to get married to Chet, and we are never told why at any point, by the way. I mean, she's already the overseer of this vault. How the hell would marrying Chet do anything? And he is a pathetic cuck, of course. He is one of the most infuriating characters in this show for obvious reasons. He discovered that she murdered the fat black guy, which is kind of funny. And during the wedding, he finally grows some balls and exposes her for being a Canadian, and that obviously she isn't supposed to be in the vault, and that she murdered the black guy for that matter. And so all the vault people chase her into her overseer room as she slowly loses her mind. Again, when you see what this leads up to in the finale, you'll ask yourself what the fucking point of wasting probably 2 hours of the audience time over the course of this season on the vault subplot was. As for the Vegas past subplot, we see that Cooper meets up with the congresswoman who hosted that like Veterans Association meeting that I barely covered in my previous review. interviews, because this random ass woman who can't act and speaks monotone is supposed to be the arbiter of a moral compass in this series. Cooper trusts her because she's a good person, which is supposed to parallel Maximus's reason for wanting to bring the cold fusion device to Lucy, because she's a good person, because women good, men bad. I'm sure someone will say I'm reading into it. In any case, the Congresswoman was tricking Cooper the whole time anyway, as she wants him to give the device to the President of the United States, who is played by Clancy Brown. And of course, the president works for the Enclave because, I mean, the Enclave is the shadow government of the United States, as I'm sure everyone watching the show knows. So the Enclave wins either way. They were playing 4D chess. If Cooper wasn't, an idiot and trusted Mr. House, who's supposed to be one of the most intelligent people on the planet. Of course, in the show, he's written like a sociopathic billionaire who's crazy, probably supposed to be commentary on Elon Musk, knowing the type of people who write this garbage. So I guess this is just another classic case of gray morality, authority always bad, common man always good, socialist slop. As for the Lucy and her dad subplot, Lucy is still not quite convinced that lobotomizing the entire populace is the solution to saving the wasteland. There's also a line I've seen memed a lot that is basically an idiot's understanding of the politics in New Vegas.
The new California Republic. It's just like the Legion. They all have their problems, Lucy. High taxes, expansionist tendencies, unpopular foreign policy. Trust me, you'll understand when you're older.
I think I do understand. One side is murdering people, enslaving them, crucifying them, and the other side is just vaguely problematic.
Again, you could probably make a whole video about this. Yes, the Legion is a bit underdeveloped in New Vegas, and even a chud like me, I would argue they're not the best choice for the region. But to boil it down into basically a Redditor's understanding of the conflict of that game is, well, honestly, completely expected for this show. But I expect this to be used in all future political discussions surrounding New Vegas for the future. What finally sways Lucy against her dad is speaking to the brainwashed NCR guy as she discovers that the only way to brainwash these people into being good slaves is to remove all of their memories of the past, as he doesn't remember any of his time in the NCR. So she decides to go shut down the mainframe, and we discover that yes, it is the decapitated head of the Congresswoman that is used to brainwash these people into good corporate drones. Now, putting aside the fact that this would most likely just be a brain, kind of like Robo Brains, I obviously understand they used her head for shock value and so that the audience could immediately identify who they're looking at. I don't even care about that so much, but the funny thing about this scene to me is that if you think about it for 2 seconds, this is actually really sexist. They're saying that the perfect society is a bunch of submissive, weak, quote-unquote nice people who do whatever you tell them to do, aka women. Granted, modern women are nothing like that, and obviously this is the evil villain's plan, so they're not exactly glorifying this, but there's certainly some interesting implications behind this. And there's a huge reveal regarding this whole brainwashing plotline in the next episode that is further character assassination of Mr. House. Now, as for the final plotline of the episode, we once again have the ghoul, Maximus, and the idiots. It starts off with something already pretty stupid, where Maximus is quite literally holding the cold fusion device in his hands, not in a backpack, not in a pocket or anything. So the ghoul obviously notices this and is like, how'd you get that? Open your hands. This is written for toddlers, dude. This is absurdly stupid. But it gets much worse, as Cooper just knows the location of an abandoned NCR warehouse that has not been looted by anyone. Do raiders not exist anymore in this universe? How the hell is there a warehouse full of guns and power armor and no one thought to steal it? Especially because we find out that the NCR isn't even fully dead in the next episode. But wait, I've got some keys to distract you with. They're jingling over here. Look, it's NCR power armor. And the ghoul references the courier, dude. He knew the courier. The show's good, and you're just a fucking hater. Every time I think I have no anger left for the Fallout show, I find something else to be infuriated about. Given the dramatic music in this scene, I feel like they're implying that the courier sided with the NCR and this is the armor he wore. The thing is, once again, the showrunners didn't play the game. The NCR didn't know how to use power armor. You used to have to actually be taught how to use it. They used salvaged power armor, which was basically just wearing the pieces of power armor without the frame, which in the modern Bethesda lore makes no sense because the power armor is much larger since Fallout 4, so a human probably wouldn't be able to wear the metal pieces. They'd be too heavy. So I guess if you wanted to be really charitable to the show, you would just say they had some engineers or maybe former Brotherhood members teach them how to use power armor, and then they made their own using the cool Desert Ranger helmet because it's iconic. But to me, the actual body of the power armor looks stupid. I think the helmet is definitely still cool, but yeah, the rest of it just looks kind of generic to me. Of course, Maximus gets to wear it because the ghoul thinks power armor sucks because it's a magical weak spot, even though this power armor wouldn't even have that weak spot. But I guess they had to give Maximus something to do. He has to be a hero this season. He can't just be a dangerous retard. We also learn in this scene that the idiot is not, in fact, a ghoul. He is an FEV mutant, or at least he's turning into one, as he's got like a mouth on his collarbone. And then the three of them go off to Vegas. They get there instantly because the Mojave Desert is tiny. You can get anywhere in 5 minutes. If you're a Redditor, you could say it's fast travel. The ugly denizens of Freeside all gather in the square thinking the NCR has returned to save them from the death claws. But then suddenly, the idiot's arm falls off. I guess his mutations are accelerating, even though they've done basically nothing over the course of the last few weeks or even months since Season 1. And so Maximus and the ghoul start fighting the death claws. Now again, here's like the idiot audience action scene to entertain the men watching. I'm gonna be honest, this is fucking terrible. It simultaneously makes death claws look really weak and really strong at the same time, if that makes sense. Maximus just gets into a fucking boxing match with these motherfuckers because, no, we can't use guns in the post-apocalypse wasteland universe. No, we're just gonna use our arm blades on the power armor to like stab them and decapitate them. I guess you could say this is like a video gamey moment, like, you know, unarmed and melee builds are pretty ridiculous when you think about them. But I don't know, to me the CGI here is pretty weak, the action doesn't feel weighty, and of course the Deathclaws decide to attack one at a time because, I don't know, fuck you. I thought it was pretty lame, I'll be honest. So Cooper gets inside the Lucky 38 and leaves Maximus behind because, I don't know, fuck him, I guess. Cooper then inserts the cold fusion device into Mr. House's power core thing, and we discover that somehow he is alive. And that's the end of episode 7. I probably talked about this one a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I did have a decent amount to say. I probably could have made a video last week, but I really didn't want to make 2 more on this series, so let's just move on to the finale. Trust me when I say there is no fucking climax, nothing happens, it's a joke. I'm gonna start off with the filler plot lines first, just so you can see how pointless they ended up being. First off, we have Lucy's brother. I didn't mention last episode, but he woke up from almost being choked to death, and then they just slammed a fucking statue on his head to knock him out again. Now that he's woken up a second time, they're gonna drag him away to give him a proper trial before they execute him. But as his love interest tries to save him, they push her and she slams against the elevator button, which opens up the shaft. And if you'll remember from a few episodes ago, the 2 grannies were raising a rad roach farm. Now we are led to believe in this show that rad roaches, the weakest enemies in the game, in the whole series, are deadly enough to kill all of these vault people. 1, all of a sudden they can fly. We never see rad roaches fly, so what the fuck is going on with this shit? 2, they start going for people's necks. These are cockroaches, dude. Really? So yeah, a swarm of cockroaches ends up killing everyone except, ironically, Lucy's brother, and I guess the love interest is still alive too somehow. Did Big Schnoz pray to Moloch to save him as they tried to exile his people for the 110th time? I mean, really, this is one of the most contrived things in this entire season. If these idiots were this easy to kill because none of them were smart enough to loot a gun. No, there's unlooted food trucks out in the world after over 200 years, but there's no unlooted guns, or at least they were too stupid to pick one up. How the hell did they wander from the vault all the way to this office building with nothing killing them? This makes no fucking sense. But whatever, it was all a waste of time. That's it. I guess we'll find out what happens next in the next season. As for inside the vault itself, after all the vault dwellers are trying to break into the overseer's office with Cyclops Woman, eventually she decides it's time to activate Phase 2 and puts on a secret Enclave Pip-Boy and then contacts the base that's, I don't know, in Canada. I have no idea where it is. Maybe they said it in Season 1. It's the same place where the Enclave scientists came from that they never brought up again in the first season that I honestly forgot about. And who the hell knows what Phase 2 means? Again, just teasing Season 3. We also, for absolutely no reason at all, get the plot twist that Cyclops is actually Lucy's dad's wife, which the only way that plot point even makes sense is if she was unfrozen way after he was, because they're not even close to the same age, and Lucy is not her daughter. Honestly, this twist means absolutely nothing to me. I don't care. Why would I? This is clearly just more melodrama for the women in the audience. Obvious soap opera tier writing. Now on to the actual meat and potatoes of the episode, the stuff that actually matters, that isn't a waste of your time. First off, we get to see the aftermath of the Legion fighting itself, I guess for days. Again, the time passage in this series makes no sense because there's so many plot lines running at the same time, but who cares? You could say this took place a week ago or something. We see that both of the Caesars are dead, and conveniently, I guess, all of the men serving under Macaulay Culkin survived, or at least most of them. And he grabs the body of Caesar. He sees the note in his coat says that the Legion dies with him. Now, as for anyone who actually played Fallout New Vegas, which I know is fucking nobody who likes this show, this is massive character assassination. The entire purpose of Caesar's campaign in Vegas was to establish a new Rome so that the Legion could form their own identity and continue to live after he dies. There is no universe where he would write the Legion dies with him. But oh no, you get it, guys. He's just an egotistical idiot who is a toxic man who just got lucky into his position. I've heard Redditors actually say this, by the way. Now, this is the part where someone posts his Gex stats and says that the mole rat has a higher IQ than him. As if the developers at Obsidian cared about the Gex stats of a non-combat stat for a non-playable character. Again, the Legion was already ruined like, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes ago, so I can't say I'm really surprised by this. But this once again shows that the people who like this show didn't play the game, the showrunners didn't play the game, none of the executive producers played the game, the scriptwriters didn't play the game, nobody played the game. And you can call me a schizoid, you can call me an idiot, whatever you want, but I guarantee you this is just more far leftist, thinly veiled, anti-masculinity, anti-white messaging. Which is ironic given that the Legion was formed from like 100 different fucking tribes. You think all of them would be white? No, but in the show, almost every single member of the Legion is conveniently white, when the rest of the Wasteland is incredibly diverse. Do you think that was intentional? Yes, you idiot. It was. So anyway, to wrap up this tangent, Macaulay Culkin just eats the note and then declares himself the new Caesar. And then his first order is to go take over Vegas with like 20 men. I wish I was making this shit up, dude. Do the writers of the show even know what the conflict of New Vegas was about? No, I already know the answer is no, because the words Hoover Dam are not mentioned once this entire season. Has a single person who claims to be a fan of the games that likes this show noticed that? No, of course not. I already know the answer. And I don't think I need to explain the importance of Hoover Dam. Again, anyone who's played the game, they make it incredibly apparent. Not only is it a massive power source, but it also has clean water. Both things that might be incredibly useful for the Wasteland, maybe. This is just yet another incredibly shallow member berry. And speaking of which, we might as well get back to Maximus fighting off all the death claws. So at the end of the last episode, he got knocked through a fence, which means the death claws can now kill everyone in Freeside. Now apparently everyone is a pussy because they just stand there. They don't even pull out their guns and start shooting. Why is the show pretending that death claws are bulletproof? They're not. Yes, they take a lot of bullets to kill unless you got a big caliber, but these people somehow have survived in the wasteland this long. They need to have basic survival skills at the very least, but no, they just run away, which of course works because these are shitty Fallout 4 death claws, not the ones that can run twice as fast as a human being. And so Maximus starts fighting him off, despite the fact he has basically no accolades on screen. He is now a badass because between season 1 and 2, he just got good, don't question it. Also, conveniently, there are missiles on the back of this power armor that just activated out of nowhere that helps kill multiple of the death claws, but eventually they start wearing him down, and so his idiot buddy goes to a nearby rooftop and has to use his foot to stabilize the gun since one of his arms fell off. But even so, eventually the last death claw disables the power armor. Maximus crawls out, grabs a makeshift spear and shield. Truly a beacon of heroicism. This guy, the guy who has committed objectively evil acts many times over the course of the last 2 seasons. And there's a joke about how this inspires the bartender at what was apparently the Atomic Wrangler, you guys are telling me, even though it looked nothing like it in the previous episodes. And you think that the citizens are going to help, and then they just turn this into a joke.
Let's take back our town.
I'm not doing that.
And then right as you think Maximus is finally going to die, which I would have actually cheered at, suddenly the NCR shows up. Dude, I have so many questions and so many problems with this scene. This is the craziest ass pull they have done yet. They have established for 2 full seasons that nuking Shady Sands somehow destroyed all of the NCR, despite the fact that it was established in the games that they had built cities all across California and had reestablished civilization. And then out of nowhere, they just went back on all of that. The black woman was right. There actually was a battalion of NCR soldiers somewhere who just somehow made their way to Vegas and then saved the day and killed the last Deathclaw. Oh yeah, and as one last huge member berry, they recreate the intro cinematic from New Vegas, except it looks really cheap and terrible. I don't know how Amazon, which has literally trillions of dollars behind it, can't get enough of a budget to recreate a scene from a rushed, unfinished, buggy video game from 15 years ago. This is all leading up to another Battle of Hoover Dam, except it's just a battle over Vegas because Hoover Dam doesn't exist. Except that doesn't happen. That's gonna happen in Season 3. And for the final 2 plot lines that merge together, we have the Ghoul and Lucy. First, starting off with the Ghoul, he threatens to kill Mr. House by shooting the cold fusion device, which Mr. House tells him is basically just going to destroy the entire planet. And then Mr. House makes a reference to a bunch of people who tried to kill him over the years, and there's even a reference to him being beaten with a crowbar, which obviously some writer fucked up. He was supposed to say a golf club, you know, to reference Andrew Ryan, because that's obviously what they were going for here. A crowbar isn't even an item you can get in New Vegas. How do you mess up an obvious nerd reference like this? For those of you in the audience who don't know, in Gunrunner's Arsenal, they added a list of like achievements you can achieve throughout the game, and one of them is killing Mr. House with a 9-iron as an obvious reference to how Andrew Ryan died in BioShock. And I believe that's what the script writers were going for with this episode, except they must have used ChatGPT or some shit and just didn't double check. Because why else would it be a crowbar of all things? Maybe it was supposed to be a Gordon Freeman reference, but that would make no sense. In any case, none of this fucking matters. The point is, he eventually gets House's help to give him access to the corporate vault so that Cooper can finally find his family after all these years. Meanwhile, back with Lucy, as she discovers the decapitated head of the Congresswoman, she also discovers that the woman is still alive and just says, "Kill me." And this is supposed to be like a big character growth moment for Lucy as she once again has to kill someone. Dude, this is the end of Season 2 of the Fallout show. She should have stopped being like a typical vaulty goody two-shoes, like episode 4 of Season 1 or some shit. This is so fucking bad, but again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to rant about it. She eventually decides to, yes, shut down the mainframe by bashing the woman with a crowbar. And then shortly afterward, she has a final confrontation with her father, trying to get him to not be a maniac, I guess. Oh, and as if there hasn't been enough character assassination in this show, Lucy's dad just says out of nowhere that essentially the plan that Hank, Lucy's dad, had been enacting this whole time was actually just a tweaked version of houses. He wanted to turn everyone into robot slaves. You know, it's funny how he just never mentions this to the courier or any of the casino families, or there's any evidence whatsoever of him having mind control chips. What the hell is wrong with the plan of just upgrading Securitrons to be the security for the strip? In what universe does this sound like Mr. House? As I said a million times, they didn't write Robert House. They wrote Andrew Ryan. So what I'm learning is all of the political debate around which faction to pick in New Vegas was a complete waste of time, and obviously Yes Man is the only halfway decent one, because everyone was just evil. Or at least in the NCR's case, they would get nuked anyway, so there's no point in siding with them. This is why so many people are saying this show feels like intentional sabotage. Like you would have to go out of your way to ruin the West Coast lore this thoroughly. And he also explains what I already said in the last episode synopsis, that the Congresswoman's brain was the perfect Myers-Briggs personality to be a corporate drone. You know, people always say those personality tests are like horoscopes for men, but I guess if it's good enough for corpos, it must have some legitimacy. He also explains that his ultimate goal is to miniaturize the mind control chips as much as possible so that you never know if someone is a drone. And here's the thing, I don't want to waste too much time on this because I don't want this to be some kind of like 2-hour-long analysis video on every way that the Fallout show screws up the lore or something. But to anyone who understands why the Fallout universe looks the way it does, why it's retro-futuristic, why everything's blocky and looks like the 1950s, one of the major ways that it diverted from our timeline in like the 50s to the 60s is because they never invented the tiny transistor. That's why the Pip-Boys are these giant fucking blocky machines instead of being smartphones. So the fact that they're finally finding a way to miniaturize things kind of ruins the entire aesthetic of the Fallout universe, but whatever. I'm not the type of YouTuber to break that down, but if you are and you're watching, there's an idea for your video. Anyway, moving on. Back to the ghoul, we hear Mr. House lecturing him through the Pip-Boy on how it's all his fault that the world ended. Yes, Cooper Howard is the most important person in the Fallout universe, despite us never even hearing his name in any of the games. Then Mr. House finally actually names the Enclave, specifically as the people behind the demon in the snow in the past, meaning the Death Claw in Anchorage if you aren't paying attention. Which is yet another strange decision by the writers and likely Bethesda as well to shoehorn the Enclave into everything, because I highly doubt Mr. House even cared about the Enclave in New Vegas at least. Considering that the remnants were like 360-year-old boomers, but whatever, that's a whole other rant. Oh, and of course, to show that Hank has gone off the deep end, he wants to turn Lucy into his perfect little daughter with one of the mind control chips. I find it very ironic that this is the type of show to try and preach gray morality, and then its main villain is the most obviously evil motherfucker who's ever lived. Lucy tries to fight back, but the huge Legion brainwash guy easily defeats her, so much for her being a girl boss. But of course, conveniently, the ghoul shows up to save Lucy right in the nick of time and allows her to determine the fate of her own father. And so her genius plan is to put one of the mind control chips on his neck, despite the fact that she knows that they wipe all of the memories from the person once they're activated. I would argue that killing your own father is better than lobotomizing him permanently and forcing him to be like the father figure that you thought you had. What makes the scene even more ridiculous is that he starts explaining his motivation. First of all, that the Legion is coming and is going to kill everyone. What, 20 people? There is no Legion left. In season 3, are they just gonna pull out of their ass like 500 people that were never shown at any point? And then he says the next stage of his plan is already in motion, that he's sent out boxes full of these mind control chips and apparently people to go do some plan. Dude, how did he accomplish all of this in a matter of weeks? He somehow abducted probably dozens of people, brainwashed them, and this is on top of him having to improve the brainwashing technology. How did he possibly do all of this in such a short amount of time? He couldn't have, because this show was written by idiots for idiots. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot that Hank gives one of the worst lines in the entire show.
The surface is the experiment, not the vaults.
This is yet another line from the show that feels like it destroys the entire fabric of the Fallout lore. Now, of course, you could always say that Hank is a madman and his words shouldn't be taken that seriously, but I'm fairly certain this is supposed to be the Enclave's ultimate plan. But if the surface was the experiment, why the hell are there vault experiments in the first place? And another line that I forgot to mention from episode 6 is that Vault Tech actually says they purposely sabotaged certain water chips, which if most of the vaults are supposed to be these crazy inhumane experiments, why would they purposely sabotage their own experiment? But by the show's own logic, this actually makes perfect sense. I mean, yes, Vault Tech planned to nuke the world, so it basically was a giant experiment, except now the Enclave are the big bads, and so it's their experiment. Now, I don't think I need to point out how dumb it is that the US government wanted to wipe out 99.9% of the global population. Has there been a nation in human history that wanted to genocide its own populace? And obviously, no, I'm not referring to some sort of ethnic replacement. I mean, literally just wiping out all of the people within your borders. And then you just hope enough people survive in the vaults that you can mind control all of those people to have a perfect subservient populace. Why didn't they just mind control the NCR that already existed? They clearly have no trouble just abducting people off the streets. So again, not really worth ranting about at length. This video is long enough. There's so many questions to ask and realistically so little time because again, no one's going to care about this show in a week. And I'm looking at the length of my recording right now and realizing I need to wrap this up. So basically, instead of telling Lucy that, you know, this is all the Enclave's doing, he would rather lobotomize himself because he had a secret remote that I guess is hooked up to his own chip. And we get a supposedly sad scene as we see him forget everything, and then Lucy just abandons her dad, just leaves him behind and walks away, meets up with Maximus, then back with the Ghoul, he discovers that his family is not in the corporate vault. Apparently, they're in a Colorado vault, so that's where season 3 is going to take place. At least there's a lot less lore for them to ruin next season. And so, Cooper basically accomplished nothing in all of season 2. I know people are going to say, oh dude, but he found out his family's alive. Yeah, but he always suspected his family was alive. That's why he was looking for them this whole time. And of course, Mr. House is like talking shit for no reason because I guess he's got to be evil. And then the season ends with Lucy and Maximus in Mr. House's office looking out into the distance, anticipating the next great NCR versus Legion war of 40 people total. Oh, and of course, if you somehow forgot that they're an item since the first season, I could never forget the smiling merchant in the window. That's burned into my brain forever. But yes, they're still in love. And of course, there's one last after credits scene where we see Quintus, the head of the West Coast Brotherhood, is now going to be a man of vengeance, and he's going to build his own Liberty Prime. Yes, it always comes back to the Brotherhood versus the Enclave with the Liberty Prime. I fucking hate Bethesda. I hate Jonathan Nolan. I hate the showrunners. I hate the script writers. And most of all, I hate the fans of this giant piece of shit. Fallout is dead. It will never recover from this. Never. Do I even need to explain again what's wrong with this season? There's so much that's bad about it. Even if you're not even a fan of Fallout, I am baffled how you could even enjoy this show. Half of season 2 was filler, if not more. It was a complete waste of time. Most of the characters are completely unlikable. Even the only quote-unquote cool character, the Ghoul, Cooper Howard, they try so hard to make him cool that it becomes cringe. And he also almost got killed by a basic-ass rad scorpion. Don't think I'm gonna forget about that. This show destroyed the West Coast lore so thoroughly that fans are convinced that Season 2 only exists for Todd Howard to take a giant steaming dump on New Vegas. And I genuinely think there is at least a grain of truth to that. I mean, he's one of the executive producers of the show, and he obviously has a massive fucking ego because he seems to think that Starfield was a good game. Bethesda has always hated that people like New Vegas more than Fallout 3, and 4 for that matter. And so they did absolutely nothing when Amazon wanted to destroy everything that real fans enjoyed about Fallout. Jonathan Nolan, another of the executive producers, Christopher Nolan's brother, openly said that he likes Fallout 3 much more than New Vegas, basically representing everything wrong with the Bethesda fans. And as for the two showrunners, Graham Wagner, before this, had only ever been a producer, and the other one, Geneva Robertson, a woman, co-wrote the screenplay for Captain Marvel. Is it any wonder the show is so utterly dog shit? I don't even want to talk about this anymore. I feel like anyone with any amount of taste already knew long ago, all the way back in Season 1, probably Episode 1, that this show is complete trash. And everyone else is an NPC, an Indian, or an AI chatbot. No human beings enjoy the Fallout TV show, period. Alright, I think I finally got all of my rage out toward this show. Hopefully, by the time Season 3 drops in a year and a half, I can approach it with a fully clown-pilled point of view and just laugh at this garbage. That's about it. See you next time, guys.